So welcome to this course on Angular. It's very happy to have you here, and specifically welcome to this section, this quick start section. Now in this section, my goal is to give you a really high level view of the major features of Angular. So we are going to be building not a complete application, not with client-side routing and an SPA, but a very basic Angular application from front to back, but just glossing over a lot of the parts of the application. But then later on, as you go through this book and this course, you're going to be able to dig into a lot of those sections in a lot more depth. Now, Angular does come with a command line tool, a CLI tool that you can use on the command line in order to create, build, and debug Angular applications locally on your computer. And we do cover how to use that command line tool in this course, and it is a fantastic tool. I think it's one of the best features of Angular. But however, in actually teaching Angular in this course, we're going to be using another tool called StackBlitz. And what StackBlitz is an online web editor / build tool. So with it, you can code in the browser and click run. It will compile your application and it will run it in a little window on the right hand side. Now the really good things about StackBlitz is that no setup is required. Everybody can code in the browser instantly from within the first minute of starting this course. StackBlitz is the name of the service, but what I call an individual project on StackBlitz is a blitz. And each blitz has its own unique URL, like this URL here. Or maybe is it this way? I don't know. And this URL is really useful because this URL points to your specific code. So you can take that URL, and if you're stuck on an issue, if you don't understand what's going on, or for whatever reason you just want to share your code, you can post that link somewhere else, for instance, Stack Overflow. And somebody in Stack Overflow can click that link, get to your exact source code, and see where you went wrong. And it's just a much better way of being able to basically ask questions at the end of the day. And right now, if you're at this website, you're here to learn, and that's what it's all about right now, is asking questions and trying to figure out knowledge. So you can't edit someone else's blitz, but you can fork it. So if you get somebody else's blitz, you won't be able to type in it, but you can fork it. Once it's forked, you get your own URL, and that's yours, and you can share that with somebody else, and your edits won't affect the person you've forked from. So again, I love the Angular CLI. I use it every single day. I'm not saying don't use the Angular CLI. I'm saying just for the purposes of teaching Angular online, I'm using StackBlitz. And in fact, if you look at the Angular documentation, you can see the Angular documentation. It's like the official Angular documentation. It uses StackBlitz as well. It's a great tool for learning and education. So when you look at the blitz in the screen above, you'll see that there's kind of a bunch of different files there. Now the file structure conforms mostly to the standard Angular layout that you get from the Angular CLI. What I've done though is I've kind of stripped out a lot of the extra stuff which you don't really need in order to teach the concepts that I'm teaching. So I've stripped out kind of a lot of the build tooling and the test files, etc. And the key thing that I've done is I tried to put as much code as possible in one single file. So if you'll see in each of the blitzes that we have, there's going to be a main.ts file, and that's going to be almost the entire application. It's just going to be stored in one file. Now I know what you're thinking. You're about to say ASIM. I've been taught my entire life not to stick all my code in one file and to separate all my concerns into separate files, and that is absolutely right. You should absolutely be doing that for your production applications. But I've been teaching for a long time now, and I remember when I first started teaching, I got a lot of complaints from students who were watching my videos because I was flipping between files in the video, and sometimes flipping between a file and a video is so fast you don't see it. Then if you blink, if you look away, then you look back at the screen and you don't really know where you are anymore. Which file is ASIM editing? I don't know, I'm confused. So I used to get a lot of these complaints earlier on. And so I went, okay, fine, let me try it a different way. And I started putting everything in one file, one single file. And so then when you see me on screen, you see me scrolling up and down, you'll see the line numbers so that you can then always know where you are in the source code because you see the line numbers. And I think that's where I've settled at over the years, is this is how I teach. I call them one-pot wonders, one file with everything inside them. I absolutely do not recommend you do this for your Angular production applications. The Angular CLI, if you use the command line interface, will actually make separate files for you. But just for the purposes of teaching again, I have everything in one file. Now, this isn't going to be in everyone's taste. I know that. But just through many years of programming, of teaching programming, has just led me to conclude that this is just the best compromise that will just appease most developers. So there you go. So just looking at the different files we have on the top of the screen. So you'll see that we have kind of an angular.json file, and this is the main configuration file for Angular. So you're gonna need this to run kind of the Angular CLI, or just it's the information you need in order to kind of compile this application to an Angular application. And then we have the package.json. So this is kind of the npm or the node packages that you need in order to support building the application. Now, when you do npm install, it will kind of look in here and find the different dependent packages and install them. You don't need all those packages in order to run Angular. I get there's some confusion at the start when people think, oh my God, you need 50 megabytes of node modules in order to run Angular. No, you don't. This is just the stuff you need in order to build Angular. The actual build files are extremely small. This is just what you need to build, your build tooling. And then just look at the source folder. This is kind of the folder that's going to contain all your source code. We're going to have the index.html, and actually in Angular, this is almost just a configuration file. You tend not to edit it that much. Then the main.ts file, this is our main.ts file. We said everything is going to be in this one main.ts file, all of the source code. Then we're going to find, oh, sorry, I should mention TS is TypeScript, and I will be going through that later on. It's a variant or a superset of JavaScript, I should say. Then we've got a file called polyfills.ts. Now that's useful if you're building or if you want to support older browsers. So Angular uses very, very modern JavaScript techniques and JavaScript features. If you're running on older browsers which don't have those features, we have a polyfills file which basically polyfills that stuff in so that it gives the same behavior in older browsers, but kind of with like a lot of facades and wrapping and extra source code. If you know you're going to be working on absolutely the latest browsers, you can go through there and probably comment out a lot of those files and just let the native browser implementation, use a native browser implementations instead. Then we've got the CSS file. So for this course, I am using Bootstrap. And so this is basically the Bootstrap CSS files. Now I'm using Bootstrap 4 alpha release, which has slightly different to the release Bootstrap version right now. I won't be updating the course to the latest Bootstrap. This isn't teaching CSS, it's about teaching Angular. So just to let you know, this is just Bootstrap for the alpha release of CSS. You don't really need to know anything about it. Other than that, then we have kind of some confusing things here. We have the tsconfig.app.json. So kind of for a subfolder, let's just call it subfolder. For subfolders, you can have a tsconfig.json, which is the configuration file that you need in order to know how to convert TypeScript over to JavaScript. So our TypeScript files do need to be converted to JavaScript. Again, we're going to go into that later on. And tslint is a linter. So essentially, it's the information you need to know. It's a way of configuring what errors you want to see when compiling TypeScript to JavaScript. This is just the Angular CLI will create all these files for you. And then in the top level parent directory, we have another tsconfig.json file and another tslint.json file. And these are just kind of the global top level configuration for the same kind of tsconfig, tslint stuff, which you can have as subfolders as well. And that's it. That's basically the basic structure of a blitz that we're going to use on StackBlitz. So most of the examples throughout this course is just going to look exactly like this. So the other thing to note is that all the code examples can also be run locally on your computer and run locally and built using the Angular command line interface. So all that example you saw on StackBlitz above, you can run that using the Angular CLI. But the key thing to note is do not download the project directly from StackBlitz and try to run that locally. It's possible to do that, it is. But because we had to change our structure of our files a little bit to work on StackBlitz, the project structure, it just needs a little bit of configuration. And rather than teach you that configuration change, a far better solution is just get the source code directly from GitHub and run it locally on your computer. So all of the code, and in fact, all of the words in this book, in this course, is available online. It's open source, it's on GitHub. So if you can get clone this entire course onto your computer, go into the chapter that you want to go into, the lecture that you want to go into, and it will usually have, or should have, a code folder. And in that code folder, once you go in there, you can just run npm install, and once all the packages have been installed, you can just run npm start, and then this is the same application that you would have seen in StackBlitz running locally on your computer. And an FYI, you have to visit localhost with the port 4200 in your browser in order to see it locally on your computer. But again, it's the same thing. That's the beautiful thing about StackBlitz, is it's going to be the same code that you see running online. You can also run locally on your computer. But again, in all the videos, I'm just going to be showing the online versions. And just a quick word about Plunker, or Plunker versus StackBlitz. So previous versions of this course used to use a similar service to StackBlitz that's called Plunker. Plunker, you can actually still use Plunker today. It's not that Plunker's gone away or anything. But it's essentially the same service that you edit and run the code online. But we've since actually migrated, all of the Plunker code has now been migrated to StackBlitz format. I won't be re-recording any videos to show StackBlitz unless there's been any material change in the source code. Okay, and that's because Plunker has a main.ts file and StackBlitz has a main.ts file. If that main.ts file hasn't changed, even though in the video you're seeing Plunker and now it's all in StackBlitz, it's exactly the same, So if it's exactly the same, I'm not going to re-record the videos. I haven't re-recorded the videos. Now, the reason we move from Plunker is just because Plunker-based projects don't work with the Angular command line interface, just the same way as I showed you just before with the StackBlitz projects. StackBlitz projects do work with the Angular CLI, so they're really, really nice. You can use one or the other. So with Plunker projects, there's a kind of a disconnect. People felt that, okay, I'm using Plunker in the browser, but I don't feel like I'm learning proper Angular because I don't get to use a CLI. So now we're using StackBlitz. You can either use StackBlitz or you can use CLI. It's up to you. And also, primarily for me, it's also because the Angular team itself have adopted StackBlitz for the official documentation. So it's just going to be better supported as Angular versions increase. StackBlitz is going to basically make sure that they work with Angular. I just want to say a final point. If you see references to Plunker in any of the docs, feel free to submit a pull request. All of this code, or everything in the docs, everything in this course is all available online and open source. So you can all become contributors to this wonderful Angular resource.